Rebel News filed for access to information into the CBC, asking for their plan to achieve net zero. I cannot wait to show you the hypocrisy we got back. Today on this episode of The Buffalo, Justin Trudeau has his heart set on phasing out Western jobs in oil and gas to meet his crazy net zero targets. But Trudeau doesn't seem all that eager to apply the same standard to his friends in the subsidized media, and I've got the documents to prove it. I went to the CBC website this morning as I was contemplating this video because I needed to scratch an itch. I was curious about CBC's love affair with Justin Trudeau's obsession with achieving net zero. Now, for those of you who don't know, net zero is a policy widely pushed by the World Economic Forum and the United Nations. It's a plan to rejig the entire economy as we know it. It includes the kind of food you're allowed to buy, the kind of car you're allowed to drive, how far you're allowed to drive it, and even what your home and workplace might look like, so that either no greenhouse gas emissions are involved in those things, or the emissions that are offset somehow through carbon capture, tree planting, and other such nonsense, which amounts to, as someone smarter than me described it, the exchange of cash or credits for the non-deliverability of an invisible substance to absolutely no one. In fact, Canada is supposed to be moving to net zero vehicles by 2035.
By 2030, at least 60% of all new personal cars sold will be ZEVs, and by 2035, every single new personal car sold in Canada will be zero emissions.
And of course, CBC, like good Justin Trudeau fangirls, well, they can't stop talking about net zero. As I said, I went poking around on the CBC website this morning, so you didn't have to, and they have nearly 2,000 pieces of what one might loosely call news on net zero. They're really working overtime to normalize that non-deliverability of a completely invisible substance to absolutely no one, aren't they? And we know that Justin Trudeau is really pushing the oil and gas sector to get to net zero, which really means net zero jobs in the oil and gas sector, net zero project approvals going forward, net zero oil and gas exports, and of course, net zero money in your wallet because, well, you have to pay for all those carbon offsets somewhere on everything that you purchase. It's like an additional hidden carbon tax on everything. So I started looking. Justin Trudeau wants to phase out our own jobs in the pursuit of net zero, but what about the jobs that, he directly supports? Maybe in the media industry, maybe even in the CBC. CBC must have a plan for net zero, especially when they seem so obsessed about making me go net zero. I mean, they won't shut up about it. So I asked for the information a couple of different ways. This video is sponsored by our friends at the Alberta Prosperity Project. They're a non-profit, non-partisan educational society uniting all Albertans, businesses, and organizations to protect their prosperity, interests, freedoms, rights, and self-determination. And boy, it is sure hard to have prosperity and self-determination when Justin Trudeau and his friends at the CBC are perpetually telling you that your job is killing the earth and your booming fossil fuel-based economy is toxic. So I thank our friends at the Alberta Prosperity Project for making this video possible. Head to albertaprosperityproject.com for more details. The first way I can tell you that CBC isn't even remotely interested in net zero, and they rather just hate Alberta jobs, is that when given the opportunity to purchase net zero vehicles for themselves, they did not. Take a look at this. I've got the request for a proposal right here. And when CBC was considering the requirements to replenish their fleet of vehicles, achieving net zero was not one of the considerations. Really, the only considerations here are that they were roadworthy and white. CBC doesn't even care if they're made in Canada, which is odd for a corporation that exists simply to shoehorn Canadian content down our throats, whether we want it or not. But then I filed for access to information to see if CBC had a net zero plan. Again, surely the mother corp, the thing so obsessed with pushing a net zero agenda and normalizing it for the rest of us, must have a net zero plan for themselves, right? Let me show you the documents we got back. We asked for any documents, including reports, briefing notes, and any communications regarding the proposed development or adoption of any net zero carbon plans for the CBC since January 1st, 2015. We covered the entire time Trudeau's been in office, and they tell us that no records were found that responded to our request. Perhaps CBC is concerned that pursuing net zero policies might be too expensive, too unwieldy, and may cost a few jobs, when it comes to their jobs, but not when it comes to us and our jobs and our families. When it's the jobs of the friends of Justin Trudeau, they must be protected at all costs. I want to thank you so much for watching, and I want to thank our friends at the Alberta Prosperity Project for helping me to reveal this extreme hypocrisy from both the CBC and their paymaster, Justin Trudeau. This has been The Buffalo for Rebel News. I'm Sheila Gunn Reid. For more Western-centric content just like this, sponsored by our friends at the Alberta Prosperity Project, be sure to check out thebuffalo.ca.